Well, welcome to the virtual live book launch of my book, The Cult of Ignorance. Thank you for joining me. Those of you who can make it, I just want to let you know I'm busy live streaming through YouTube at the moment, and I've got TikTok on the other side. So like and share wherever you are watching this through. We're going to have some interesting discussions. So without further ado, let's kick this off. I just released my latest book called The Cult of Ignorance, as many of you have probably seen, those who follow me. And it's been, those of you who don't know, this is actually my fourth published book that I have released. The first two were, the first one was Losing the Faith, Truth Under Scrutiny. The second one was called Cults, How They Work. And third one was Learning and Development. That was aimed at corporate. And of course, the fourth one is this one, which is aimed at the broader public, The Cult of Ignorance. So, yeah, what inspired this one has been a culmination of years of personal experience, um, observations, and discussions with people over the years. And it just so happened that I had this synopsis of this book in the background on my desktop, on my laptop, for quite a while. And towards the end of 2024, I decided I need to finish this because events that were unfolding in the world the book was talking to these events that was unfolding. So I released the book, I wrote the book, I finished it, and of course, I subsequently released it now. So um, the inspiration behind this, I stumbled upon Isaac Asimov's essay, which is called The Cult of Ignorance, A Cult of Ignorance, that he published in 1980. And those of you who don't know who Isaac Asimov is or was, Isaac Asimov was a biochemist at Boston, professor of biochemistry at Boston University Medical School. And he wrote this article called A Cult of Ignorance. And I quote some of this. I'll do a reading of the introduction where you can see how this ties in. And he wrote, back then that there's a cult of ignorance that is pervasive, not only in America, but in the world as well. And it touched on the very questions that that was plaguing me, questions of like, we are living in an era of unprecedented access to knowledge. So why does ignorance still thrive? Why do conspiracy theories, science denial, and anti-expert sentiment dominate public discourse? And these were things that plagued me. And how did we reach this point where misinformation spreads faster than facts and critical thinking is treated as elitist? It seemed as if there was a war on expertise. There's a rise of conspiracy thinking, to manipulate public opinion, and through propaganda and technology in some sense. So this is what led to this book, and what we see today, is just reiterates what I started writing in 2024, and what the book covers. So I'm going to, just to give you an idea, before I read the introduction to the book and some excerpts, just to give you an idea of some of the chapters, the table of contents in this book. Of course, there's the introduction. Chapter 1 deals with the origins of anti-intellectualism. Chapter 2 deals with the worship of ignorance. Chapter 3 is the myth of equal opinions. 4 is media and misinformation. Chapter 5 is ignorance on the silver screen. Chapter 6, I cover the war on expertise. Chapter 7 is the cult of conspiracy. 8 is education, a double-edged sword. Chapter 9, the erosion of critical thinking. Chapter 10, religion and the rejection of reason. And Chapter 11, Technology, Enlightenment, and Enabler. Chapter 12, which is, I think, so relevant today, is Political Exploitation of Ignorance. And then chapter 13, The Ignorance Fanaticism Feedback Loop. 14 is The Commodification of Ignorance. And 15, Reclaiming Rational Discourse. So those are the chapters in my new book. This book is, of course, available on Amazon, on Take a Lot for South African buyers, and other platforms as well, like Lulu. If you don't, I know there's some sort of boycott against Amazon as well, but you can buy it off lulu.com. The very same book is there. So I think what I'll do is I'll read the introductions to the book, which I think is quite important, just to give the viewers an idea of what the book is all about. So I'm going to read the introduction to this book, and then you guys can make up your. I'll read some other excerpts as well. So introduction goes as follows: Ignorance is not a passive absence of knowledge. It is an active force, a stubborn refusal to engage with ideas that challenge our comfort zones, beliefs, or worldviews. It is not simply not knowing, it is the celebration of not needing to know. This book is a response to that dangerous phenomenon, which Isaac Asimov so aptly described in his 1980 essay, A Cult of Ignorance. Asimov's observations remain startlingly relevant today, particularly in a world where misinformation flourishes, anti-intellectualism thrives, and critical thinking is dismissed as elitism. But this book is not just about social ignorance, it is also personal. I write these words as someone who once inhabited a world governed by certainty and unquestionable truths, a religious cult. For years, my life revolved around dogma. Every aspect of my existence was dictated by doctrines handed down from supposed authorities, and questioning those teachings was not only discouraged, but considered outright rebellion. Escaping that environment was one of the hardest and most illuminating journeys of my life. It was through that process of awakening that I came to understand that true power of critical thinking that the true power of critical thinking and the profound dangers of fanaticism. Reflecting on Isaac Asimov's essay, I found echoes of my own experiences in his critique of society's glorification of ignorance. He wrote, "There is a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge." This quote hit me like a revelation. The cult of ignorance Asimov described was not just a societal trend, it was a mindset I knew intimately. It is a mindset that thrives not only in religious or political circles, but also in everyday interactions. It is the dismissal of expertise, the distrust of intellectuals, the comfort of simplistic answers over uncomfortable truths. It is the refusal to engage with complexity because complexity requires effort, humility, and the willingness to admit we might be wrong. This book, then, is both a warning and a call to action. It is a warning about the dangers of a world where ignorance is celebrated and intellectualism is vilified. But it is also a call to embrace curiosity, critical thinking, and the courage to question. And these are qualities that have the power to break down the walls of fanaticism and build bridges to understanding. My journey from certainty to curiosity. Before exploring the broader themes of this book, let me share a little about my own journey. I grew up in an environment that claimed to have all the answers. The group I was a part of, some would call it a religion, others a cult, offered a ready-made worldview. It gave me purpose, community, and certainty, but it also demanded conformity. Independent thought was dangerous, questions were discouraged, and doubt was treated as a personal failing. For years, I accepted this framework. It was comforting to believe that the world could be neatly divided into good and evil, right and wrong, truth and falsehood. But as I grew older, cracks began to form. I started to notice inconsistencies in the teachings, hypocrisies among the leaders, and questions that no one seemed willing to answer. The turning point came when I began to read books and articles from outside the group's approved material. It was a terrifying act of rebellion, one that filled me with guilt at first, but it also opened my eyes to a world of ideas that I had never considered. One of those ideas was the importance of critical thinking. Critical thinking is not just about solving problems or making decisions. It is about cultivating intellectual humility, the ability to say, I don't know, and then seek answers. It is about recognizing the limits of our own knowledge and being willing to listen to those who know more. It is about valuing evidence over emotion, logic over loyalty, and truth over tribalism. This was not an easy lesson to learn. Leaving the group meant losing my community, my identity, and my sense of certainty. It meant confronting uncomfortable truths about myself and the world, but it also meant gaining something far more valuable: the freedom to think for myself. The cult of ignorance in society. What I experienced on a personal level is mirrored in society at large. Just as I once lived in a bubble of certainty, insulated from challenging ideas, many people today inhabit echo chambers where their beliefs are never questioned. Social media algorithms reinforce these bubbles, feeding us content that aligns with our existing views and shielding us from opposing perspectives. This phenomenon is not new. As Asimov noted, the cult of ignorance has deep roots in history, from the persecution of Galileo for daring to suggest that the Earth revolves around the sun, to the Scopes monkey trial, which pitted evolution against creationism. Anti-intellectualism has always found ways to assert itself. What has changed in recent years is the speed and scale at which ignorance can spread. The internet, for all its benefits, has become a double-edged sword. It provides access to unprecedented amounts of information, but it also enables the rapid dissemination of misinformation. Conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, and alternative facts can gain traction faster than the truth. The result is a society where expertise is devalued and the line between opinion and fact becomes increasingly blurred. This is dangerous for many reasons, but perhaps the most insidious is how it erodes trust in institutions. Scientists, educators, and journalists who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of knowledge are often dismissed as elitist or out of touch. In their place, we see the rise of self proclaimed experts whose primary qualifications are their ability to confirm what people want to believe. Why critical thinking matters. At its core, this book is about the antidote for ignorance. Critical thinking. Critical thinking is not just a skill, it is a mindset. It is the willingness to question, to doubt, to challenge, and to learn. It is the courage to face uncomfortable truths and the humility to admit when we are wrong. But critical thinking is not easy. It requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to engage with complexity. It requires us to resist the allure of simple answers, and to confront the biases that shape our perceptions. And it requires us to value knowledge for its own sake, even when it does not serve our immediate interests. Asimov understood this well. In his essay, he lamented the tendency of society to equate democracy with the idea that all opinions are equally valid. The strain of anti-intellectualism, he wrote, has been nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. This is a profoundly dangerous idea. Democracy depends not on the equal validity of all opinions, but on the equal opportunity to participate in informed decision making. When ignorance is celebrated, democracy is undermined. When expertise is dismissed, progress is stalled. So, and then the last section of the introduction, a call to action. The cult of ignorance is not an inevitable phenomenon. It is a choice made by individuals, communities, and societies. And like any choice, it can be changed. This book is my contribution to that change. It is an invitation to question, to doubt, and to think. It is a challenge to reject the comfort of certainty and to embrace the uncertainty of learning. It is a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is not a luxury, it is a necessity. In the chapters that follow, we will explore the forces that sustain ignorance and the strategies needed to overcome it. But for now, let me leave you with this thought. Ignorance is not just a lack of information, it is a lack of curiosity. And curiosity, the desire to know, to understand, to grow, is the antidote to ignorance. This book is for the curious. If you have ever felt frustrated by the prevalence of misinformation, disheartened by the dismissal of expertise, or inspired by the power of a good question, then this book is for you. Let us embark on this journey together, not as a lecture, but as a conversation about the value of thinking, the dangers of fanaticism, and the power of curiosity to transform our lives and our world. So that's the introduction. And I think that last paragraph, it just sums it up. I wrote this book as what I would like to call a conversation starter. I want people to read this and have conversations around what is in here, what I've said, in the book, and what's come out. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote this. As I said, I've those of you who've been following, I touched on a bit of my background coming out of an organization where, um, you know, questioning was frowned upon. A religious organization, questioning was frowned upon. Critical thinking was not encouraged. You could only read information that was sanctioned by the group. And for many of us who come out of that organization and like-minded organizations, we understand that. But this book is more about how pervasive this phenomenon is in society at large. Because over the years I've done a lot of my read independent books outside of the group I was. And these questions started plaguing me in society as a whole. Why is this so pervasive? Ignorance. As I said, it's not something, the word ignorant, and I use the word ignorance as a term that all of us at some stage, fall under, because without learning, we stay ignorant. And we see that today. Before I carry on, I just want to acknowledge a few people in the chat. I know Yvonne said hi. XJW Furious, thank you for joining. Sunny Simplify, thank you for joining me on virtually on this launch. And then there's a few people here on. I think Thrifty Treasure, thanks. Congrats, Robin, on your new book. Thank you very much. There are a few people on TikTok as well that have joined. Shy will buy it. Thank you. Your support is appreciated, guys. I really, really appreciate your support. So thank you for joining me. And I think what's also important to mention is, I've touched on a few subjects that is relevant to South Africa. What's happened in the past few months concerning South Africa and the land of the Stars and Stripes. I'm not sure if this book this book might get banned in the land of stars and stripes because yeah, it touches on a lot of things that are happening right now and a lot of things that are happening in South Africa currently. And how ignorance is celebrated there. And I thought I'd just there's a chapter, the myth of equal opinions. And I just want to read a small excerpt from that chapter, um, just in terms of what I mean, because in the introduction, I touch on the myth of equal opinions. So I'm just going to read a small excerpt, and it goes like this. The idea that every opinion matters has become a sacred tenet in society that prides itself on equality. But somewhere along the way, this noble ideal has been distorted into a dangerous fallacy. The belief that all opinions are equally valid regardless of evidence, expertise, or logic. This misconception not only erodes critical thinking, but also allows ignorance to masquerade as informed debate. The consequences are far reaching, influencing political discourse, public health, scientific progress, and the very fabric of rational decision making. The roots of the myth. The notion that all opinions deserve equal weight stems from a core democratic principle, the right to free speech. Democracy, at its heart, is built on the premise that every individual has an equal voice in shaping governance and society. However, this principle is often misapplied in contexts where knowledge and expertise should take precedence over uninformed conjecture. And John Stuart Mill, in his seminal work on liberty, argued for the importance of free speech and open debate, not as an endorsement of all opinions are equal, but as a mechanism for refining truth. So that chapter, The Myth of Equal Opinions, I delve into why that is such a dangerous, notion. Um, the fact that everybody's opinion is valid and equal. Doesn't matter if it's uninformed. I mean, me debating medical issues with a professor of medicine or a doctor, I cannot sit around the same table debating these experts and professionals in their field. And this myth is pervasive in society today. And we need to challenge that. We need to challenge it because it's dangerous. Just to acknowledge a few more people in the chat, SDAR, I was naive about religion is how I got mixed up with the JWs. Yeah. you know, um, Indoctrination forms a large part of being ignorant as well, um, which is unfortunate because indoctrination happens over time, even from childhood. So, yeah, it's very, very pervasive. One of the things I do touch on, uh, in South Africa, which is very controversial right now in the South African political playing field, is number one, the Bellable, and number two, the myth of the white genocide that's happening in South Africa. Of course, I touch on that in one of the chapters and show you how people are so easily riled up and don't actually go behind the scenes and actually check what's behind, what's the purpose when misinformation like that spreads. Although you show them facts, how cognitive dissonance plays a part in the whole equation. So yeah, and I think one thing that's also very interesting that a lot of people will find interesting is the book is Ignorance on the Silver Screen. Look, uh, we this is something that I noticed how blockbuster movies portray certain narratives. And I want to read just a small excerpt from the book where I speak about ignorance on the silver screen. And it goes like this. Like so many of us, I like to curl up on the couch with a bag of popcorn to watch a good movie or a series every so often. But beneath the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood, there often lies a more insidious reality. The film industry's long-standing role as a purveyor of propaganda and perpetuator of ignorance. From its early days to the present, Hollywood has frequently aligned itself with political and military agendas, shaping public opinion through the power of cinema. And that is a fact. We've seen that play out in Germany in the 1940s, how movies were used as propaganda by Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda. And then I go on to say the military entertainment complex. Since World War II, the Pentagon has recognized cinema's power to shape public perception. Blockbusters like Top Gun, with its sleek fighter jets and high octane bravado, and Zero Dark 30, which turned the search for Osama bin Laden into a gritty procedural, do more than entertain, they sanitize war. These films benefit from military corporations gaining access to cutting edge equipment, personnel, and technical expertise. But there's a price. Scripts are vetted and often rewritten by the Department of Defense's Film Liaison Office to ensure the military's image remains pristine. This isn't mere collaboration, it's soft censorship. The trade-off is clear. Films that align with the Pentagon's preferred narrative get blockbuster budgets and glossy realism. Those that challenge militarism, like Platoon or Born on the 4th of July, are denied support and they are forced to work around Hollywood's powerful gatekeepers. The result? A cultural landscape dominated by recruitment-ready propaganda. War as noble, soldiers as untouchable heroes, dissent as unpatriotic noise. And this doesn't only happen in Hollywood. I'm going to go back to apartheid South Africa. Many of the television shows that were shown and news programs that were shown in apartheid South Africa was pure propaganda. Uh, it was deliberately crafted to portray superiority of one race over the other. And of course, other races were excluded for a very long time from even being featured on television. Excuse me. So this happens all over the world. And it's something that if we are not careful, as I said, we all like to sit and watch a good movie. We get lost in these shows, right? And it's entertainment. However, sometimes there are sinister, uh, um, and pervasive reasons why these movies are made. It's to whitewash, some acts of war and portray one nation as superior to the other. So that is why a lot of these things happen. Silver screen, a lot of the series. So that chapter, touches on issues of that. I go into quite a bit of lengthy discussion on it. David H. on YouTube says, "Congrats on your book, Robin, and I look forward to reading it." Quote from MLK's book, I think, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." 100% correct, David. Thank you for joining me and tuning in. Yeah, anybody on on TikTok? There's quite a few people that I have on TikTok that has joined. Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate you joining. As I said, the book is available on Amazon. South African buyers, Takealot stocks the book. Those of you who would like to buy it from other online stores, lulu.com is one. And I'm currently recording the audiobook. So those of you who don't like reading and rather listening to books, I'm currently in the process of completing the audiobook, and I will let you know when that is released. So those of you who like to listen while working or doing some work around the house. That'll be for you guys. Uh, Second to last, I just want to touch on chapter 7, which is the cult of conspiracy theories. Now, this is a very interesting chapter that I wrote because I've got personal experience when it comes to the whole conspiracy theory side of things. So I'm going to read an excerpt, and it goes as follows. The conspiracy theories have always been a part of human history, but their prevalence and impact have grown significantly in the modern era. From QAnon and flat earth theories to anti-vaccine movements and the belief that the moon landing was staged, the rise of conspiracy thinking has become a defining feature of modern discourse. But conspiracy theories are not just harmless speculation. They have real-world consequences, influencing elections, public health policies, and even acts of violence. What is it about conspiracy theories that makes them so alluring? Why do so many people reject expert analysis in favor of elaborate, often baseless alternative narratives? And more importantly, how can societies combat the spread of dangerous misinformation while respecting free thought and skepticism? And then it goes on to say the psychology of conspiracy thinking. When faced with uncertainty, chaos, or complex global events, humans naturally seek explanation that can make sense of their world. Conspiracy theories, with their neat narratives and clear villains, offer seemingly simple answers to complicated questions. At their core, conspiracy theories appeal to fundamental psychological needs: the need for certainty, control, and belonging. Understanding this psychological foundation is crucial for addressing the growing influence of conspiracy thinking on our modern society. Now, as I said, when I left the organization that I was a member of, and I was on the search for truth and trying to make sense of the world, I stumbled upon, and I touch on it in this book, in this chapter, I stumbled upon David Icke. So David Icke was a former footballer and sports broadcaster, and he's written a few very successful books in terms of conspiracy theory, perpetuating conspiracy theories. From the conspiracy theory that the uh, royal family are shape-shifting lizard people, to just a few things. So, what interested me of one of David Icke's books was, in one of the books he has a chapter dedicated to the group I was a member of, the religious group I was a member of, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I read this book. Some of the stuff he writes about in the book are partially true, but then it goes off on a tangent into Illuminati spheres and shape-shifting lizard people and aliens. So I read the book with an open mind because, as I said, I was on the search for understanding more what's happening around me. But my critical thinking brain started kicking in. Remember, I just came out of leaving a high control religion, and my critical thinking kicked in, and I thought, this doesn't sound too convincing to me. But I touch on David Icke and his work in here, and how he has been banned from a lot of social media platforms for spreading misinformation and disinformation. So yeah, but for a moment there, I was really absorbed in the stuff he was writing about, and that just shows you how easy it is to fall for these conspiracy theories. Because they conspiracy theories, it's black and white. There are clear villains that are being portrayed, clear villains, and and we all love a good story, and that's why storytelling is so important. And there's a part in the book where I touch on how storytelling even on those of us who have come out of conspiracy thinking, why it's important to use storytelling as a mechanism to counter misinformation and ignorance in the world, because on that side, they use storytelling, and we've got to counter that. It's one of the tools that needs to be used to counter those debates in those debates. So conspiracy thinking, yeah, very interesting. I mean, as I said, I'm writing from experience in this book. When I left uh, the high control group that I was a part of, and chapter 12 touches on what's happening currently in the world. Look, we all know the world is messed up. We are in a world that we don't know if we're coming or going. From the one day to the next, what's happening in the political field, um, it's a roller coaster ride of emotions and information, and it's just overload right now. From white Afrikaner genocide myths happening in South Africa to the land of the stars and stripes, and what's happening in that country, and of course what's happening in Europe as well, and how fascism is on the rise, which is actually scary to see. You know, we thought that was something of the past, and we've learned from history. We've learned from Nazi Germany. We've learned from Mussolini's Italy. But it seems to be rearing its ugly head again. But yeah, I digress here. I want to read just a small little excerpt of the cult from chapter 12, political exploitation of ignorance. And I think a lot of us would resonate when it comes to this. So I'm going to I'll just read a small excerpt here. It says, politics, like technology, wields immense power to shape society. While democratic systems are built on the ideal of an informed electorate, history has repeatedly shown how ignorance is exploited to manipulate the masses, consolidate power, and perpetuate inequality. The parallels between politics and technology in their capacity to influence and transform society are striking. Both have the potential to empower individuals and communities, fostering progress and innovation. Yet, both can also be wielded as tools of control and oppression when placed in the wrong hands or used without proper safeguards. Democratic systems, in their purest form, are designed to give voice to the people, allowing them to participate in the decision-making process that govern their lives. The foundation of this system rests on the assumption of an informed citizenry, capable of making rational choices based on a clear understanding of the issues at hand. As Thomas Jefferson famously stated, an educated citizenry, excuse me, is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. However, the reality often falls short of this ideal. Throughout history, we have witnessed how political actors have exploited ignorance and misinformation to further their own agendas. This manipulation takes many forms, from the spread of propaganda and false narratives to the deliberate suppression of information that might challenge existing power structures. The exploitation of ignorance in politics is not a new phenomenon. Ancient rulers and modern dictators alike have recognized that a populace kept in the dark is easier to control. In the words of Noam Chomsky, the general population doesn't know what's happening, and it doesn't even know that it doesn't know. This state of affairs allows those in power to shape public opinion and behavior to their advantage. One of the most insidious aspects of this exploitation is its self-perpetuating nature. By keeping citizens uninformed or misinformed, those in power can maintain their grip on authority, which in turn allows them to further control the flow of information. This vicious cycle can lead to the erosion of democratic principles and the consolidation of power in the hands of a few. And that's just a little excerpt from chapter 13, how politics takes advantage of ignorance. In the comments, SD says, history is repeating itself. That is 100% true. And then XJW Furious, we've learned from history. It's a pity the world leaders apparently haven't. 100%. It might be deliberate manipulation for power. All these things are done to consolidate power in the hands of a few, as I think we've all started noticing. But yeah, it's frightening. It's frightening. Not only, as I said, not only from a political perspective, but across religion, from the religious perspective as well, and just in general society, how society perpetuates, many in society perpetuate these, ignorance and opinions that are based on misinformation and disinformation. We seem to be valuing experts in their field less, more and more. And that's because, number one, we have the internet, we have TikTok, we have YouTube, where social media influencers that have no expertise or professional background perpetuate narratives and think that they can give their opinions in terms of science, medicine, public health, and so forth. And it's frightening. And it's frightening. And I don't need to mention, how certain diseases have resurfaced because of um, anti, vaccine sentiments that have been perpetuated for a few years now. Diseases that have been eradicated are making a resurgence. So, yeah, that's the gist of the cult of ignorance. And I think, those of you who are interested, thank you for those who have already bought their copies. I appreciate it. It's use it as a conversation starter. Thank you for feedback. I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from quite a few people already about the book, and I'm glad to see people enjoying it. It's always worrisome to an author when you release a book. Is it going to resonate with people? Will it resonate to the base, to readers? And I'm glad to see that it does. It's starting conversations, which is great to see. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of work, insight into putting together a publication like this. So, yeah, there's a few people have joined on, as I said, see people have joined on TikTok listening in. And of course, quite a few comments being shared on YouTube. A few people that I recognize in the chat. Thank you for being supporters. And yeah, I'll be doing, as I said, the audiobook will be available probably in the next 2 weeks, but I will let you guys know. I'm doing the narration myself, so it'll be read in my voice. Yeah. Because I've asked people, should I get somebody to read it? And everybody says, no, you read it. It's good to hear it from the author, the narration from the author themselves. So I appreciate that. So I'm a bit hard at work and recording that at the moment. And then I have there might be a few interviews lined up, as I said, coming on mainstream media as well. So look out for that. I'll keep everybody posted on those in the mainstream media. So look out for those. That'll be very interesting to see. Yeah. So the Cult of Ignorance available in as I said, on all the online bookstores, major online bookstores. It'll take a while for it to filter through to the brick and mortar bookstores, but it will eventually get there. As I said, busy with that at the moment. But for those of you who can't wait, it's available online. Take a Lot, my South African friends and readers, you can get your copy on Take a Lot. And yeah, thank you for joining me today. I think I'm going to end it off there. Sunny, Simplify, thank you for sharing. My pleasure. Thank you for joining me today with this virtual book launch. And this launch will be available on YouTube. So if anybody would like to share the link to the video with friends and family members, please do so. I'll appreciate that. Let's get the conversation started. I think it's important, especially in the world we're living in today, and I must admit, I look at people, on social media, and it seems as if people don't, they feel, helpless and hopeless. But we have to start these conversations and let people know that, if we rally together to fight the cult of ignorance, um, we can, start living in a better world again. So yeah, thank you very much, folks. I appreciate it. And those of you who would like to get the book, you can, and let me know, in the comments, even if after the show, if you've read it, let me know in the comments, write a review, leave a review wherever you buy it from. Reviews help me, I just like to see what people think about the book. So I appreciate it. And with that, I am going to say until we meet again, and let's fight the cult of ignorance together. Start that conversation. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you very much.